Well, thank you all again for being here tonight and for sticking around. I can't see anything. We're gonna have just a few minutes of a discussion following the movie with some professionals here in the state. A couple of people that were in the movie, somebody that produced the movie. I was not in the movie. If you're wondering where I was,
We just cut your credit.
yeah, I'm listed somewhere in the credits. Greg, I want to start with you. You're the producer of this film. This is your third documentary on the subject. Funny thing about Greg is I've gone with Greg now 2 or 3 times to an inpatient residential setting. And I'll be walking around with Greg, and there's people kind of whispering and pointing at us, and I naturally think they're making fun of me or what I'm wearing, but in fact what they're doing is they're pointing out Greg, and they come rushing up to him, and they say, yo, like, aren't you the guy that did the anonymous people? And Greg will say yes, and they'll get selfies with him and autographs, and I'm kind of relegated to the background. Like, Greg's a celebrity in this space. Greg, with the creation of this film, what was kind of the 1 or 2 things as a producer you really wanted to try to get across to people in the film as you were making it? And what's kind of the biggest lesson you learned during the journey?
Yeah, I can walk through any airport, any train station, any street corner. Nobody recognizes me, but rehab famous. So it's an interesting dynamic. But no, it's certainly a labor of love. Jeff Riley couldn't be here tonight. He's the real talent behind this project, and the editing and the storytelling and the directing, in order to capture these gentlemen to my left and their stories among the other folks in the film. I think the big goal, you see the problem. A lot of films have the addiction problem. The news media has the addiction problem. Kind of, we all know about the problem, and people want to blame the Sacklers and Big Pharma and all these things and point fingers, and we've done that for a long time, but yet we haven't talked about, okay, well, what do we do about it? And there's a lot of people out there who've been fighting for a long time, doing things about it, and like the folks in the film, it happens at different layers. There's not one solution to addiction, there's not one answer to it, but we got to impact culture, we got to impact young people, we've got to impact people in need of services, we got to increase access. So it's layered and it's nuanced, and I think that's what this medium really allows, to be able to get into kind of the depth, and hopefully you all feel like these guys, right? And Jeff's a brilliant, just in 20 minutes or 22 minutes with them, what this medium really allows, and you really understand what they're doing. So it's a pleasure and a joy to be able to work on films like this. And thank you to everybody for coming, and the Healthcare Council of Chicago and Third Horizon for helping support this project.
Darren was really touched by your story. Most important question I have for you is, what is the likelihood we could get you to come play for the Chicago Bears? Does that? In fact, I'll go one further. I would like to issue an official invitation, but I don't have any authority to do that. So, Darren, to talk just a little bit about the league and athletics, kind of in general. It feels like in the last few years we've started to have some tougher conversations about these young men and young women who are in the spotlight, whether it's in collegiate athletics or professional athletics. But talk a little bit about the kind of the inside culture. Are we starting to see people kind of follow the trend that you're trying to set? What do we have to do to really kind of invite these kinds of hard conversations in those environments?
Yeah, as far as the culture of athletics, historically, I feel like there's this underlying precedent, if you would say, that we have to perform in order to be worthy, and whereas we need to know as people that our truth is that we are worthy as who we are. There's going to be times where I may not catch the pass that I need to catch or that everybody expects me to catch or the game-winning catch, and people may say certain things, and that can weigh on me. I have to find ways to cope with that and deal with that because in my mind it's been taught to me that I am worthy through my performance. And that's a culture that weighs on a lot of people. I don't know if anybody saw the Today Show today. There was a young man that, medically retired from Ohio State and was sharing his battle with depression and just how exhausting it became just trying to hold that weight up and carry that weight around everywhere that he went. There was a star soccer goalie for the Stanford women's soccer team that committed suicide, and you look at these situations and it's like, wow, she's at Stanford, she's balling, she has a great GPA, she has a great future, but these things aren't enough. These external things are not enough, and I feel like a lot of athletes now and people within that culture are starting to realize that. It's like we have these dreams. When I was in the Ravens uniform in that movie, I checked off every box that I thought was gonna make me happy and was gonna make my life fulfilling, but I was my most miserable because money couldn't do it. Being wanted by women or walking into a room and having men look at me with a level of respect for what I didn't do it. And it's just, we're waking up and realizing that these things are great, but they need to be, they can't be a means to an end. Like I can't be doing this to get glory or to get money. It's like, there has to be a greater purpose behind it. And so that's why there are people like me and a lot of other athletes that are in a position trying to push to the forefront their causes and things that need to be talked about, discussions that need to be had that are, deeper than the surface level, deeper than, did you see the game last night or, or how much money somebody's making or talking about other people, but it's really getting to these deep below the surface conversations because, the resume of success isn't doing it for a lot of people. It's leaving us miserable and feeling lifeless. So I feel like we're slowly moving in the right direction.
I just got to tell you, it's so profound. It's so important. I think as a society, we collectively kind of project this strength, right? We have this expectation that you make great money or you get a lot of eyeballs on television, and so like, what do you have to complain about? What do you have to be sad or sorry about? But seeing people like you, Darren, some of the things we saw during the Olympics, right? With these people kind of standing up and being vulnerable and being okay to be vulnerable and saying like, I struggle and I need to be seen as me. That signals to society something different than society has signaled to the athletic class or the celebrity class or anything else of that nature. Dora, I want to jump over to you. Let's talk a little bit about Chicago for a second. First, I think it's useful if you just tell everybody a little bit about what you do. And then talk a little bit about how this movie resonates with you in the context of our city and the kinds of things you think we're getting right and the kinds of things that we are just failing at.
Yes, we are Chicago Recovering Communities Coalition. We are the first RCO in the state of Illinois. We provide recovery support services beyond the treatment doors. All of our services are free. It's for families, not just for the person addicted. We provide Narcan trainings. We provide recovery support, recovery education, life skill groups. We also have a youth group, which it mentors youth, and we talk about prevention. And there's a lot of services just there. We're located on the west side of Chicago in the Austin area. We are the second largest community with overdose deaths. And help is available. And we just need to get the word out that help is available. And what we are getting right is there are eyes on the problem. The solutions are there. In the movie, these are the solutions that we need to incorporate in whatever community that we're in because they are there. And we don't need to turn our backs. We don't need to shut the doors. We don't need to pretend like the problem don't exist. We are 24/7, even during the pandemic, continuing to provide Narcan trainings and distribution. And with the help of the city of Chicago, we now also distribute fentanyl strips. So the need is there, the services are there, and we just need to continue. This movie was great. It painted the picture of harm reduction, the services that are there, meeting people where they are, boots on the ground. We need to do more outreach because it is devastating our communities, west and south side.
Thanks, Dora. Sarah, as you know, last night I brought my 9-year-old daughter with me. Today, she pleaded with me to come back, and it wasn't because she had like homework or anything. Like, she legitimately wanted to come back. Last night, I kind of worked her up into a little bit of a tizzy. We were driving home, we were on I-294, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but there's a $100 million construction project going on I-294, which is just nonsensical to me, because that highway has like 1 hour of congestion every day throughout the week versus like the rest of the city, which is awful. And so she starts popping off about, well, how could the state spend $100 million on I-294? And I went and saw a movie about that shit. Sorry, Avery. That's your third cuss tonight. That's the last one I'll do. I know the state has been passionate about this. I know the state has done some things recently. What is your expectation of the folks down in Springfield over the next couple of years, especially as we come out of COVID and we have the exacerbation in our communities that we have?
Well, I think you're right. We've talked for a long time about addiction recovery. We've talked about prevention. We've talked about treatment. For many years, it fell on, I would say, semi-deaf ears. I wouldn't say we didn't have champions, but it was a struggle to rise above a capital plan. Roads. It's been a struggle. Unfortunately, the reason why I believe it has risen now is because we have seen the epidemic, and then the pandemic exacerbated it at the same time. At the same time, we were talking about, and we've seen it in the movie, an epidemic of loneliness, despair. We hear more about suicides, and it's happening in every single district in this state. So when constituents start calling and they start saying, what are you doing, Representative so-and-so, Senator so-and-so, then it rises to that level. And I think the key here is we as advocates, Dora and I have been doing this work in Illinois. There are advocates here in the room that I've known for years that have been doing this work. It has to get beyond us. It has to get into the public. That's why a movie like this is so important, because this medium shows exactly what is happening and, like Greg said, what the solutions are. Because the general public is the one that needs to be making those calls and saying, what are you doing about addiction? I mean, it's great that you fix the potholes. You're always going to get those calls. We all want those fixed. But you also want the general public to be saying that, because that's where the difference is. And I think that's what we started to see with the opioid epidemic. But what's unfortunate about that is it was because the opioid epidemic moved into white suburbia. So that's when the phone calls became important. And it's got to be bigger than that. It has to be much more than that. And we have to be making those calls. We have to be having those conversations in every community.
Well said. Joseph, that brings me to you. I'd love you to riff just on what Sarah said about that, a little bit just about the culture and the way the culture needs to change. But Joseph, to make it up for the third cuss in front of my daughter tonight, I'd like you to maybe also just speak to her. She's going to be 10 years old this weekend. One of the things she said to me last night was, Dad, what can I do about this? What would you tell her? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so that was, yeah, use the microphone because we're recording. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start with talking to your daughter, and then I'll call to the culture if I have time. Yeah. I see you. Hi.
She's going to kill me.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Forgive your father for this. First step. Don't hold any grudges. I think what young people have is an opportunity to begin the practice of reflection, of forgiveness, of grace, and making that a part of who they are at a young age. And so asking your father about, how do I respond when I feel angry? What is something that I can do? How do I respond when I feel sad? What is something that I can do? And if he doesn't know, being like, hey, Dad, there are lots of books out there. Let's go on the internet together and find resources. Because a lot of the times what I found out when I was your age, when my parents got angry, they had a drink. When they got sad, they had a drink. When they got stressed out, they had a drink. And that's what I saw. And so you have such a loud voice and such a powerful presence. Use that to say, Dad, I'm going to hold you accountable, and I want you to teach me better ways to deal with this stuff that I feel on the inside, because I'm not getting it in other places. And then I want you to go to my school and say, I care, Dad, you care more about my spirit than my academic record. You care more about my soul than my academic record. I have my whole life to learn how to do this stuff better. But if I don't create a foundation at a young age of how to be a person that's okay with being a person, I'm going to have that fight and that battle for the rest of my life. Come into Mary Poppins, that shit anytime, man. That's 4.
But that's 4. Oh, I'm in trouble.
And the question that you're not asking, the main question that you're not asking, yes, I will come and play for the Chicago Bears also. I'm really insulted. I'm so insulted. I'm only 2 inches shorter
Joseph.
and like 20 years older than him.
Joseph, listen, it's pretty bleak right now, so come on in.
There's a spot. There's a spot for everybody. Literal bad news.
Oh my God, I am very rarely at a loss of words when I'm moderating a panel. That was good. Dora, talk just a little bit about one of the things that has, so we've been here for about 9 or 10 years. We do a lot of work in the city. I spend a lot of time on the south side, spend some time on the west side. One of the things I have noticed is that the community organizations in our city like to just eat each other. It is highly political. It's charged. I'm on the board of Sinai Chicago, I think, as I told you a little earlier. And we go through these annual meetings, and it's all about how I can outcompete the other community organization for state funding to do things that only I can do. And there are literally hundreds or thousands of organizations in our city that do amazing work. How do we coordinate better in this city? And where does that start? Does that have to start at the mayor's office? Do we need to be better as stakeholders in the community? Like what have you observed in the work you've done?
2 things. Collaboration. We can all do the same things. It's not about who can do it better. We need to just come together and do those things. The services may overlap. Right now, we have on the west side, and there's multiple ones that we're also involved in, is the Recovery-Oriented Systems of Care Councils. And what those councils are there to do is to bring grassroots agencies and providers together to talk about providing services to families and people in recovery. And it doesn't matter if you do what we do. We just want everybody to come together so that people can know that the services are there. We have a recovery task force, and it's all about providers, wherever you are, coming together to present the information and letting people know in the communities what those services are and what you're doing. We have to come together because there's more than enough people to serve. There's more than enough people not getting the services that they need. So how do we come together, stick together, and stay together and provide the services?
Sarah, you were the CEO of the Illinois Association for Behavioral Health for a number of years, and so you've also kind of had this institutional view throughout the state. How would you respond? How would you respond to the question, and what about Dora's response resonates with you?
I think what you say is true. What we've seen across the state is a competitiveness, for lack of a better term. But the last time I looked at the data, Illinois was treating 5% of the need. So 95% of it was going untreated. So what Dora said is there is plenty to go around. There are enough people that need to be served. And I do think we are starting to see some of those barriers broken down. I think the pandemic just naturally did a little bit of that, even when people were saying, I can't get PPE, can you get PPE? And we started to help each other and realize that, oh, our organizations weren't going to go under if we shared. So I think there was a little bit of that. I'm not saying it's solved. There's still that competitiveness there, and the need to make sure that you are paying your bills and paying your staff and keeping the lights on. But there's also a recognition that we can't do this alone. That it's not just the state legislature, that it's city councils, that it's the county that we're talking about. It goes to school boards, I mean, principals association. This is more than just big politics with a P. It's little politic, and it's local. And that's where the rubber meets the road, is where you have to be the one to reach your hand out. Call that other provider, call that community organization and say, how can we work together? When we start to see that, we see so much more success in what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, the people that we are taking care of don't really care. They just want to get treated. They just want to have the recovery services. We don't have enough recovery support. We are one of the largest states in the union, and we have, 5 RCOs in Illinois? 5 recovery community organizations? There is plenty to go around. And I think it takes just making that phone call and reaching out your hand.
So to that end, the reaching out your hand imagery, one of the most powerful parts of the film to me is the video vignette that was taken from now Secretary Walsh's confirmation hearing. And I won't do it justice by trying to repeat the quote, but he talks about that moment, right? That moment that somebody might be capable of, ready to make a decision to begin the path to recovery. Some of my friends here in the audience and up on the stage know that I lost my dad, brother, and sister all to opioids over a multi-year period, a lifetime ago. But as I've rewound the tape in my life, I kind of think to myself, what was the moment for them? Did I miss that moment? Could I have done something differently in that moment that might have preserved them? I don't know the answer to that to this day. But Darren, it kind of tees up a question for you as somebody who's on their recovery journey. Talk a little bit about your moment, that moment for you. What were the most important things that you received from others that helped you take those first steps? And for anybody, any of our friends in the audience tonight that knows a loved one, has a person who's going through this, what advice or counsel would you give to them when they think that moment has presented itself?
So first, my moment for me was August 11, 2017. I overdosed in my Jeep in Owings Mills, Maryland, right near the practice facility in Baltimore. And for me, just the things that surrounded that moment. I was always a people pleaser growing up. I was, I couldn't feel good about myself unless you told me something about me or you felt good about me, then I could feel good about myself. And just the significance of that being in that moment where I was completely alone in that parking lot. Nobody knew I was in that parking lot. I was getting ready to move back to my parents' house because I had just gotten suspended. So I'm just in this place where people think I'm supposed to be getting my act together, and I said I was gonna get my act together, but I just didn't have the skills or just the honesty in my life to do that. So I had to crash and burn pretty hard in order to have my eyes open. And from that experience, I was able to muster the words to kind of talk to my parents about it. And my parents shared my family history with me and just the alcoholism and the addiction that runs through both sides. And from that, I was able to see how this trend had continued in my family. And, you know, I felt like up until that life, I felt like I was living with no meaning or no purpose or no kind of power. But when that was presented to me, when it was saying, this is the course of your family until now, basically, what are you going to do about it? That was the first time in my life where I felt like if I made a decision that it could have an impact. And just for anybody that may have a person in their life that is approaching that moment, you know, watching tonight, one of the things that I took away was the Officer De La Rosa when he was saying that people have lost the ability to care for themselves, and that we can help change that for them by being compassionate towards them. Because, you know, going into a rehab facility, some of the things, you know, that I'm facing is like, I need to develop the ability to be rigorously honest with myself, or I'm not really gonna make any kind of progress. Up until that point, I had no hope or no faith in anything, so I need to go about the business of cultivating that, finding that. I'm gonna be needing to right the wrongs that I've done in the past, whether they be monetary or, you know, things that I've done to other people. And then going about how I'm gonna serve other people, and all these things are right in front of me, and it seems daunting, and it's like, at the same time, the voice of my addiction is gonna be gnawing at me and yelling at me this entire time, like, it'll just be easier if you come back over here, because it's gonna be a lot of hard work to keep going. And these are all the things that are going through the mind of that person that needs help. And it's not gonna be a perfect journey, but I would say that you offering them that compassion is going to hold them until they're able to offer it to themselves. And then at some point, you don't even know that they could possibly be in the seat that I'm in today, offering hope to somebody on a much larger scale. You don't know, but you should treat them as such.
One of the taglines to the film that was up as we all came into the auditorium tonight, I hadn't noticed it before. I hope I don't botch it, Greg. Addiction isn't a choice, compassion is. And that really resonates a lot with me. I think compassion, I think one of the other things he said and was really on display in the film is the vocabulary we use to describe these things. And it's funny how mainstream this is. My wife and I were watching Jimmy Kimmel last night. We watch late night as we kind of go to sleep, and I can't even remember the basis of the joke, but he was listing out a series of things, and he made a reference to Mike Lindell, the now kind of infamous My Pillow guy, who does the commercials on Fox and kind of got notoriety around the end of the Trump administration, and referred to him as a crackhead pillow salesman. And of course, you know, Jimmy Kimmel laughs, the audience laughs. And the joke was generally well placed, but this whole notion of a crackhead, an addict, a junkie, like this is language that the entire audience would have understood the reference to Mike Lindell without the predicate crackhead. And that's a cultural thing that I think does have to shift. And so you talked a little bit about the culture shifting. I think your film, Greg, gets at the notion of the culture shifting. What makes you believe the culture is shifting? And I want to challenge that one step further. Sarah made the distinction between white neighborhoods and neighborhoods of color. And that now we're really paying political attention because the problem has moved deeper into white suburbia. And I don't disagree with that at all. How is the culture shifting? Is it shifting in the right way? And as we think about communities that have dealt with decades of divestiture, socioeconomic decay, us building highways through them or around them, like what else do we need to be doing to shift the culture, to reduce the stigma, to change the language in these communities? And Joseph, I'm coming to you next on this same thread as we wind this down. So start putting a poem together or something.
Well, it's a great question, and I think part of the culture shift, you know, is a little bit at we always look at pop culture and we always look at the community level. I think it goes to the heart of like what Dora was talking about, this recovery-oriented systems of care. And so what Darren just said, people have something called internal social capital and there's external social capital. And so addiction really devastates. And for years we told society and culture that they get well when they're ready. We gotta wait till they hit bottom, and when they're ready, maybe they'll get well, or maybe they're gonna die, or maybe we'll lock them up, but it's on them. And that's just a flat out lie. What happens in actuality is that just as we get addicted, whether our biology, our society, our surroundings, external capital, our environment plays a role. And so if we had as many recovery community centers in our neighborhoods, especially in the South Side and the West Side, as we do cannabis dispensaries and liquor stores, these are the kinds of things that can attract wellness, just as communities of faith can attract wellness. We can build social capital. It doesn't mean that the individual still doesn't play a role, that their family still doesn't play a role in them, and the healthcare system doesn't play a role in them getting ready or willing to accept help or get well. But there are things that we can do, and we can institutionalize wellness, prevention, treatment, recovery. We can build these things in communities. The best example of this is on college campuses. We're seeing this explosion, not in the city of Chicago, apparently, as I was told today, but we're seeing this explosion of recovery community collegiates on, college programs, where on campuses where binge drinking is the culture, there's these anti-culture communities popping up of recovering students. And they're pushing back on that cultural, and they're making it, they're in the activities handbook, and they've got the separate space. And so we're institutionalizing the idea that people do recover here on this campus, people do get well here, and we need to do that in communities, and we need to continue to do that and build the resources in sustainable ways.
Joseph, I'm going to pitch the last question to you. I don't know how many of us are left, but let's assume there's about 70 of us here in the room. We're all going to go home tonight. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to get up tomorrow and do whatever it is we do on a Wednesday. It's tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Thank God. Joseph, what is the one thing you think, if each of us did a little differently as we approached our day, we could be doing to have an impact, not just on somebody that might be having a substance use disorder, but somebody that might be 3, 4, 5 clicks away from that upstream, might be struggling with depression, anxiety, loneliness, isolation, feelings of self-deprecation. You're a motivating guy. What should I change about the way I interact with the world tomorrow to make it a little bit better?
I think you have to make self-care an intricate and inseparable part of your existence. If I am well and I invest in my wellness, not only am I better prepared to be in the day, I am more capable of offering compassion when it's necessary. I'm more capable of forgiving myself and others who may have transgressed against me. I am more capable of being a reflection for people who see me and are looking up to me one way or the other, whether it's my children or my coworkers or my spouse. Like, people are looking to each other for an example as to how to continue and be in this world. And sometimes if you are an a-hole to me, then I'm like, well, I get to be one right back to you. And now this cycle is going, and that negative energy is coming home with me. And now I have to disperse that negative energy somewhere. And look who I have here in front of me, my children, who I get to curse and talk about this other person. And now they're seeing this example of what this energy can do in the world. And if I had just taken a moment in the morning and written in my journal something that I'm grateful for, something that I'm looking forward to the next day. If I would have taken a moment and not add something new to your schedule, but take something out that isn't serving you, that 30 minutes on YouTube may not be serving you, go for a walk, right? Just go for a walk. I'm not trying to add more things onto it, but there are things that we can take out and move around and arrange and do without and add things that offer us value. So what is that for you? What is that one thing for you? Is that one thing that will allow you to be better for yourself so that you have the ability to show up for others when needed? Whatever that is, find it. And if you can do that, I think, imagine if everyone did it, right? So the thing is, everyone gave $1 towards this, or if everyone just treated themselves a little better, how easy it would be for us to treat each other a little better.
It's a beautiful answer, and it's a wonderful admonition. I sometimes do wonder about the notion of, well, if everybody just did it, and then I think to myself, well, of course, David, everybody's not going to do it, and then I kind of get into this self-defeating mode, but then I kind of play it out, and I think if there's 70 of us in here, and each of us did that on Wednesday, and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and every day we possibly can, knowing some days we're gonna be less perfect than others, the 2, 3, 4 people we might touch in a day, and then the 5, 10, 15 people, those people might touch in a day. This has a cascading effect. There are things that we won't always see. There are things that won't always be visible to us. We won't ever see the downstream implications of our actions correlated with that self-care, that kindness, that compassion. But those implications are there. And so I think it's a wonderful challenge. It's something that I will wake up tomorrow and challenge myself to do. I hope all of you will as well. I want to thank you again for being here, for sticking it out with us for a few extra minutes to have a conversation. And thank you to my friends and colleagues up here. Let's give them a round of applause.